And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Zach Allison with ATS. You are with us for our inaugural ATS University of the 26th season. We're diving back into our ATS University program. It was very successful last year. It was fun going through the year-end metrics. I think we did, 40 different sessions. I forget the overarching big number. I won't make one up, but the number of people, number of engineers that attended, number of hours provided last year was well exceeded our target. So, very appreciative of everyone jumping on with us. Hopefully, you guys continue to find it valuable, and we'll continue to deliver these. If this is your first ATS University, welcome. ATS is a product selection, product configuration tool. It's a tool that engineers, design build contractors, and even some architects and interior designers for like their accessories and grab bars and everything. They jump on the spec tool for that. But us, the mechanical guys, we've got water heaters, we've got pump sizing systems, we've got all your backflow valves, heavy duty piping, everything that you could possibly need on the mechanical side. So that's really more my specialty. And we run a number of these sessions that focus on sizing, understanding the codes behind certain products, understanding the configuration, how to select what are some of the important options of certain products. And that's really the focus of the ATS University. So SpecTool is where you can find all the products that we talk about, configure them into exactly the variations that you need for your project, and then download them in any of our spec formats, all for free, all paid for by our lovely sponsors. And the sponsors are the ones that, also provide us all the information we need for these ATS universities. So, it's a little bit of yin and yang. They help us provide this awesome system to you, and we provide this great floor so that, engineers can understand the products that they are specifying. So with all that being said, there's a bunch of housekeeping. I'm sure everyone's pretty understanding of virtual webinars these days. We always make sure that everyone's muted upon entry. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat field. Any question along the way, please raise them so we can, make this as valuable to you as possible. And then at the end of the hour, we always make sure to send out our certificates of attendance. So we'll have those sent out by the end of the week by our team. And is this an accredited ASPE CEU as well? You never know.
Is that a question to me?
Yeah, is this like
I,
a ASPE CEU? Well,
I'm
maybe
not.
not because it's very branded, right? It's pivot
It
proof.
is. Yeah, it is. I would doubt that it is.
Yeah. So if you do need CEU credits, we run a number of those as well, and we do have different presentations that if your firm's looking to get specific CEU hours, we can get those accredited presentations to you. If you're just doing like your Ontario PEO CPD hours, or all the different provinces have their different versions of continuing education credits. So we'll be sure to have our certificates of attendance set out for that. All that being said, that's my long way. Thanks very much for joining us today, Darren. We're going to dive into this awesome new control panel that launched a few years back. I
Mhm.
know it's made my life a lot easier every time I'm specifying the Zoeller pump and trying to find the appropriate panel. So I'm excited to share the info.
Excellent. My taking it away.
Take it away.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, my name is Darren Meyers. I'm coming to you from snowy Louisville, Kentucky today, and that's the headquarters of the Zoller Company. So we're going to be talking today about the Pivot series of control panels. And that said, we'll go ahead and jump into it. My background, by the way, I'm a civil engineer by education. I've worked with Zoller for over 20 years at this point, doing a lot of different things, a lot with applications, both pump systems, pressure sewer applications, lots of controls and control panels. And I was part of the design team when we developed this Pivot series a few years back, and we've had really good feedback with it. So that said, I'll get in here, try to share my screen, and get into the presentation. Let's see.
Looking
All
good.
right, is that up for everybody? Zach,
Yes,
does that look
sir.
good?
Looking good.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn my video off, and then we'll just do the presentation part there. All right, so again, this is a discussion about specifically the pivot. So a lot of people know Zoeller because of the pumps. We've been around for close to 90 years at this point, and for the vast majority of that time, we've been known as a manufacturer of a lot of different types of pumps, sump pumps, sewage pumps, and we have various divisions around the world actually that produce other products for us as well. And controls are one of those. And I'll get into some more detail in a little bit. But the panels that we're talking about today, these are actually built in Canada. They're built in at Tulsar, which is a division of the Zoller Company, which is in Brantford, Ontario. So just a little tie back um, to Canada for you guys. So why are we doing what we're doing? So we began this uh, a number of years ago, or rather a few years ago. And prior to that time, we had some manufacturing partners that we bought control panels from, and we did that for decades and decades. But we decided quite a while ago that we really wanted to be able to uh, not just produce obviously pumps, but the associated products that go along with it. And so a big part of that is going to be control panels. If we're putting a pump into an application and it's not an automatic pump with a switch that's attached to the side of it, you're going to need a control panel to do it. So those two components need to be able to work seamlessly together. So control panels, being able to do our own control panels was something that we had in mind for a long time. And we were able to finally put that into practice a couple of years ago. And so we actually acquired Tulsar controls in Brantford probably 10 to 15 years ago. And then we began to produce a lot of electronic products there, but we weren't really doing the core of our control panel business until about 2021. And that's when we uh, began producing these pivot series panels. We obviously wanted to do it for a number of solid reasons. The first one there, vertical integration. If we have the ability to control our own supply chain, and understand how our products are manufactured, control the design aspects of it, there are obviously a number of benefits in that. Um, it also gives us the ability to pursue designs that we want to pursue. If we want to do something odd or different, we don't have to convince anybody else to do that for us. We can do it ourselves. We can produce it. We can put ourselves out there in that way. That allows us also to plan for the future. We have a series of products out there, but we have a goal to uh, grow and evolve that product line. And again, by having it in one of our own divisions, being able to do that ourselves, that matters a lot to us. And then the last thing there is to protect our own innovations. So we've done a lot of new and pretty cool things with the Pivot series. But that's not the first time that we've done innovations in control panels. Gosh, probably close to 30 years ago, we came up with some really, really great ideas for some control panel items, control panel behaviors that we were working on with, our manufacturing partner at the time. But ultimately, they were the manufacturer, and so they control all of that. So we wanted to have the ability to innovate, create new things, put new things out on the marketplace, patent things that were new and novel, and be able to reap the award the benefits of doing our own innovation. So building our own panels allows us to do all of those things. When we set it out to create what ultimately became the Pivot series of control panels, we had several things that we wanted to keep in mind. Historically, most control panels, the companies that make these, the lines of control panels out there, what you have are a series of base model controls. and they don't, they do just the very basic operation, and they may have a number of options that you can add on to. You can increase the price. They will build things in a they'll configure it in a way that works for you. So again, you have this base panel, but if you needed to do anything different, and for instance, let's say you needed elapsed time meters or event counters, or let's say that you needed some uh, um, seal fail monitoring or something like that. Those were typically options. So you'd have to take a base panel, you'd have to get it quoted with certain options to do what your project requires. And then once you've done that, it would be unlikely that you could just go to a supply house and find that panel, right? It becomes then sort of a special order item. And we thought, there can be a better way. We have a lot of new technology. Microprocessors are everywhere. They're inexpensive, and so we thought, look, let's build a control panel that has the majority of options that anybody might want, and just build them into the panel. And you don't have to use them, but they're there if you want them. And so it makes ordering one of these control panels very simple, because now really all you need to pay attention to is, what's your voltage and phase, how many amps are your pumps going to run, so that you match the core electrical components up. But in terms of functionality, these control panels come loaded, and you can use what you want. You can ignore what you don't want, and but it's there. You don't have to special order this stuff. We also, again, mentioning technology, you can you can build programming and firmware into these products that can create effectively an intelligent panel. And we know from being in the field for a lot of years, doing a lot of projects out there, that there are certain problems that just arise over and over and over again. And we thought, look, we know that these come up. We know that these are uh, issues that stump people from time to time, and not infrequently. How can we build a panel that is proactive about addressing these things, so that uh, we don't wait until there's some kind of catastrophic failure before we're notified? All right. We obviously wanted to put out a product that maintained relatively closely price-wise to what we were doing before. We wanted these panels to remain compact. We're packing all these extra features in, but we don't want the panel to get super large, because that affects shipping costs. It affects real estate on the side of a building, or in a mechanical room. So we wanted it to remain compact, but we wanted to have enough room in there to be able to get in and do what you needed to do. And the last point down there is a big one. This was really the driving factor for a lot of this. We wanted to make sure that we prioritized running the pumps. If you have a control panel that is attached to a pump, or a couple of pumps, that panel has really one job. I mean, at the end of the day, its job is to run the pumps to get rid of water, right? Whether that's sewage water coming out of a basement, whether it's dewatering from a storm type of an application. The control panel's job is to turn those pumps on and off, and make sure that things don't flood. And historically, there are a lot of ways that a traditional control panel can be very easily and simply foiled into not running the pumps. If we take just the simple example, let's say you have a three float system, and that bottom float is your stop float. So, as the water rises, your stop float rises. The one above it is your start float, and that's what turns the pump on. Well, if a stop float, the very lowest float in the tank, got stuck in the downward position, and didn't come up for whatever reason, or maybe the float failed, even though the water would continue to rise and raise floats above it, the panel wouldn't do anything. And that's a problem, right? Now the one job that panel has been effectively voided. It can't do that job. So we knew that we could do things differently. Ultimately, we developed two core smart products, the Pivot and the Pivot Pro. The pivot is the simpler of the two. We'll start there. It's available only in single phase. There is no LCD screen. So if you look at the little display, can you guys, I don't know if you can see the cursor that I'm moving around here. Hopefully you can. Um, but the little bracket here, it has a series of LEDs on it, but there is no screen, no screen display. If you compare that or contrast that with the Pivot Pro, you'll see that we have a screen here with some function buttons that allow us to navigate through some menus. But on the standard Pivot, it's a lower cost version, really more for uh, residential or very light commercial duty. So there is no LCD, but there is a lot of notification that happens with these LEDs. Um, you can change settings. There are so many, excuse me, so many settings within these control panels that are customizable. We're going to be talking through a lot of that stuff, but there are multiple ways of changing this, either through a USB device or there are some jumper pins on the back on the circuit board that you can pull that will manipulate some of those behaviors. But I would say, we put a lot of thought into how these products go in the box. And we've made choices such that I would say on a pivot application for 90 plus percent of the jobs that you're going to deal with, you don't need to change any configurations. Anything that you need this panel to do, it's going to be able to do right out of the box without any modifications or adjustments. Um, and so that was the intent. We wanted it to be simple and easy to use. So the Pivot Pro, by comparison, is a more functional panel. It's designed more for a little more commercial type duty. It is available in both single and three phase. There is the LCD screen here that I alluded to before, and that LCD screen tells you a lot. It tells you the different alarm conditions that occur. If there's an alarm going off, historically, people just tend to think, oh, an alarm is going off. It is a high water alarm. That just becomes synonymous with people. A control panel alarm going off means high water. Well, for the pivots, that's not necessarily the case. There are a lot of conditions that these panels monitor for, high water being one of them. But understanding what actually is alarming, what this control panel is telling you is really important. And that's super, super easy with the Pivot Pro. The screen literally reads out uh, what alarms are occurring. If it's more than one, it cycles through whatever alarms are current and present at the time. And so again, you also still have a series of LEDs, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Um, The all of the Pivot Pros come out of the box standard with the ability to monitor seal fail circuits. So if you have a double seal pump with seal fail probe, this panel is ready to accept that wiring so that it can monitor that seal fail circuit for you. If you have a three-phase panel that has the need to have thermal monitoring, and a thermal cutout. These panels are out of the box ready for that. Historically, that was an add-on that you had to make sure that your panel came with the ability to accept, a thermal lockout. But these panels out of the box, all of them do that, whether you need it or you don't. Um, so the other thing that we have in the Pivot Pro is the ability to connect to our ZControl cloud system. We'll talk more about ZControl a little later on, but ZControl is an IoT platform. It requires the use of a separate gateway. They're not that expensive. You take a gateway unit, you can plug it directly into this control panel. The gateway is powered from the control panel, and it will allow the panel itself to communicate with the cloud. And what that gets you is real-time monitoring of events. If an alarm goes off, it can notify you through several ways. It can notify you through an app. It can send you a text message. It can send you an email. So there are a number of ways that it can communicate. You're able to silence alarms remotely. Uh, there are certain configuration changes you can make remotely. And if you have these connected to the Z Control, it actually stores a lot more historical data about the panel. And we'll talk more about that later in the presentation. So, just a kind of a quick comparison regarding these two products. If you open the inside and looking at the inner door, you'll see a number of different stickers and labels and items in there. For starters, you're going to see this QR code, which does a couple of things. The QR code is going to link to our resource page on the internet. The next slide will talk more about that, as well as the bottom of that sticker allows you during a startup to record some information that's really important to record. So that's right in here. There is the CUL mark is in here. There's an FCC statement, just regarding electrical interference. Um, we have down here, there is a little pocket that has a spare wiring schematic, as well as what we call our convenience pack. And there is a wire jumper in here that I'll talk more about, as well as some spare fuses that are always handy to have. Then there's the device ID, which is only going to be really important to you if you're putting this online. So if you're going to use a gateway, this device ID right here is a good thing to know about. And then lastly, down at the bottom, we have the manufacturing label, and it's going to provide a lot of pertinent data about the electrical characteristics of the panel. It's going to give you the model number, revision. It's going to tell you the firmware revision. It's also going to tell you, what voltage and phase the panel is designed to operate, what kind of amperage the panel can handle, the max, what is it, the SCCR ratings. All of that exists on this manufacturer's tag. If you look at the wiring schematic, this is just a sample wiring schematic that you might see. And there are going to be two of these. One of them is going to be in a packet that's in the box, the carton that contains the panel when you open it. The second, as I mentioned, is in the pocket of the panel itself. So there are two of those in there. Hopefully, one ends up staying with the panel and not getting thrown away as well. But all field connections, it's worth noting that the field connections are all denoted by dotted lines. So if you look around, some of the wiring, any of the solid lines are wiring that's inherent and part of the panel out of the box. Any of the dotted lines means these are the connections that you're going to need to make, or your installer or electrician is going to need to make when this thing is put into service. So this is a bigger blow up of that QR code and startup tag. Again, this is a sticker that's on the inner door. And uh, so we'll start with the lower portion of this. When you do a startup, it's a great idea to record this information. If you write your pump models down here, because during a startup, you're going to know what all that information is. In 5 years, if a service tech comes and they open this thing up, they're really going to appreciate knowing the model numbers, as well as the startup information. What were the measured amps? What were the site voltage and phase when you did it? What was the startup date? If you record all of this, it gives a record to anybody who comes after. Like, these were the starting conditions. These are the pumps we're dealing with. If they know they've got a pump down, they don't have to pull that pump to find out what model it was. It's literally written on the inside of the door. So I would encourage anybody who's doing any installations, use this when you do a startup. Fill out this information and do a big favor to whoever comes after you. And the next is this QR code. I mentioned that if you scan this QR code, it will take you immediately to a pivot resource page, which is really, really handy. That pivot resource page, it's on Zoeller's website, and it has a number of links in here that will really save you some time. So, alarm conditions table will help you decipher if it's a standard pivot versus a pivot pro, and it doesn't have the screen. It will help you decipher what that control panel is telling you. There's some quick reference guides, which we'll talk about, that you can re-access through here. Just a number of really great references that you may need if you visit a site and don't have these documents at hand. Just scan that and it will take you right to where you need to be. So also, in addition to the wiring schematic that's in the box, there's going to be a couple of other things. One is this quick reference guide, and then there's a full manual. And the full manual is a pretty substantial booklet, and it will tell you everything you want to know about these panels and how they operate and how to hook them up. It's very detailed. It's very thorough. But because it's very detailed and very thorough, very few people want to actually go through it. And we understand that. If you're looking for something specific, it's there. But we also wanted to provide a quick reference guide that distills down really the most important stuff. So there is a quick reference guide for the standard pivot without the screen, and there's a different one for the Pivot Pro. And we're going to go through them one at a time, kind of hit on the main points here. So for the standard pivot, the this is what it's going to look like. It's this document here. It's a single page, 8.5 by 11 sheet. And then these are just some reference pictures for the presentation. But it's going to, first off, it's going to tell you over on the left-hand side how to make your connections. So you will see, these are the connection terminals. You can see them in the image. They're actually horizontal down here at the bottom. But this tells you what they are, and it tells you how to hook to them, whether it's hooking your floats in, dry contacts, and then the control and alarm source power that's coming into these things. And so this is important to note. I'll say one of the common calls that we get from people who are installing one of these panels and they've not done it before, they aren't familiar with them. There are two places that you need to bring power to in order for this panel to operate properly. There's a power source for that runs the bulk of the controls, and then there's a backup alarm control power source here. And I'll be honest, we have them separated out in case you want to bring separate power separate power feeds that are independent from one another. Most people don't do that though. Most people will simply drop a jumper in from one to the other. There's a neutral and then two hots. They'll drop a jumper across here. So that jumper that was in that envelope on the inner door, that's what that can be used for. But best practice would be to bring in two separate power feeds in case one happens to trip at the source breaker. It doesn't kill both circuits. But it's important that both of those be powered or the system's not going to operate right. And it's obvious that it's not operating right. It will either appear dead or all the lights are going to come on and it's not going to be responsive. And so, we get a lot of calls in product support because people are like, oh, this is the behavior that it's exhibiting. And the first question that the tech will ask is, did you bring in power to both the control and alarm power, which is ACIN is how it's marked, ACN, and then alarm AC, ALAC. And that's typically the issue. So it also tells you when you bring in your pumps, you're going to land your pump cord wiring. In this instance, for this control panel, it's telling you you're going to bring it directly to the bottom of the motor contactors. It tells you where to hit it. And then it tells you how to navigate through the display bracket here. There are LED lights that tell you things. There are some pump mode buttons that will switch between handoff and auto. And then there's a little startup flow chart. So if you're doing this for the first time, just kind of walk yourself through this little flow chart and make sure you haven't missed anything, and it'll carry you right through. So I mentioned if you don't have power on both the control as well as the alarm, then it's not going to behave. So this is one example. So this little bracket is telling you up here alarms, AC alarm. Basically, in this scenario, either somebody didn't bring power into the alarm circuit, or there are two fuses down here. Those two fuses correspond directly to those inputs. And so if you don't bring in control power or the control power fuse blows, then the control panel is going to seem dead. Basically, no lights are going to be on. It will look like it's unresponsive. However, if you lift the high water alarm, the alarm will sound, and that's the backup alarm doing its job. Now, if the alarm fuse down here blows, or if you don't bring in power to the alarm side, then all of the lights will come on. You'll get this alarm notification. Again, it will seem unresponsive, and you won't be able to change anything or do anything. But that's the panel's way of saying, "Hey, look, something isn't right." You either have a fuse that's blown or something's going on. But it will be an alarm and telling you that something's going on. Again, the idea here is we want you to know when something is wrong. We want it to be obvious when something is wrong. So we talked about the standard pivot quick reference guide. The Pivot Pro quick reference guide is very similar, but it's more thorough because there's more to know on a Pivot Pro. So we'll break down the quick reference guide for the Pivot Pro in a couple of sections. This part looks pretty familiar. Again, we have examples of both the simplex and duplex terminal blocks. In the Pivot Pro, the terminal strip is oriented vertically. And so it's got this exact same orientation, but it tells you again, this upper portion here is telling you you need, this is where you're going to hook your thermal connections and seal fail for pump one if you have them. If you don't have them, you can ignore them. But if you have them, then there are instructions on how to hook them up. Here's where your floats are going to go. Again, you have a set of dry contacts, both normally open and normally closed. And it's the same control and alarm power hookups that you had in the standard pivot. Again, we'll tell you, depending upon what control panel you have, how to hook up power to the pumps, where to bring that power in, whether it's three-phase or single phase. It may differ one versus the other. Also on that quick reference guide for Pivot Pro, it's going to have a section that tells you how to interact with this LCD screen and how to read, for instance, the default display. When you open this thing up and look at it, this is what you're going to see. There's generally a D. It could also be, I think, an A uh, or an S, and and then it's going to have a couple of numbers. And what these are going to be the cycle counts. That's just what it shows you when you open it up. So if you were to pop this thing open, pump one at this point in time has 25 cycles. Pump two has 15. The the D, which in this case means that the panel is in duplex mode, it will alternate between line one and line two. And this is telling you that the next cycle that runs, um, the next time that the panel calls a pump to run, it's going to call pump one. If the D were down here, it would tell you that basically, pump two is on deck to run on the next cycle. If a pump is currently running, a couple of things are going to happen. You'll see a pump run light for either pump one or two. And then you'll see a little caret up here in the display that's indicating that pump is running currently. So there's some other menu items that we're not going to go through this in detail, but as you cycle up or down through this menu, you'll see these different screens come up. And so this is just tells you, what these different things mean and how you can manipulate them. On the back page of that quick reference guide are a couple of flowcharts. There's an installation flowchart that will carry you through, and so it splits right at the very top. Is it going to be single phase or three phase? Because you'll follow a different procedure, whether it's one or the other. And then, once it's installed, when you're ready to start up and do a commissioning, there's a startup flowchart that you can follow just to make sure that you haven't missed any steps. And then lastly, on the right-hand side here, there's a small troubleshooting scenario or flow chart that gives you a couple of troubleshooting conditions you might run into and some things to look at to correct those. There's an alarm conditions table. Again, the Pivot Pro makes it very, very easy to understand what alarms are happening because it just tells you right on the screen. This alarm conditions table is actually more beneficial on the standard pivot because depending upon what LEDs are lit up or what the beacon is doing, it may indicate different types of alarms. So I mentioned that all of the Pivot Pros have the ability to take seal fail inputs if your pumps happen to have a seal fail circuit. So you'll see on the bracket here, you've got these two seal fail screws. And you can't really see the screws. They're down on the circuit board, but if you were to look, through those holes, there's just a little set screw down in there. And then operates kind of like a volume knob, if you will. And so you're basically turning up or down the sensitivity of that screw. So when you do the startup, and you have your seal fail circuits set in there. In these little boxes that you see here, these are taken right from the quick start guide. But it basically tells you what to do. Hook them up, and then when you want to calibrate them, you're going to turn the set screw up. You're going to turn that sensitivity up until you get an alarm condition, and then you're going to back it off about an eighth of a turn. It says it down here at the bottom. And so you'll do that with both of these, and that will set the sensitivity so that if you start to get water intrusion in and you begin to have water building up in that seal fail cavity, uh, it will be in a position to acknowledge that and tell you, hey, you're starting to have a seal fail and water is starting to get into that seal fail chamber. All right, let's talk about the technology, some of the technology that we have inside these control panels and what makes them, I think pretty great for most applications. So we'll start with data recording. And this is one of the weak spots, I would say, and it has to do with the fact that there's limited storage capability on the chip or within the panel itself. So all of the pivots will track cycle counts and elapsed run time for each of the pumps. So that is right there in the panel for you to get at any point. Uh, Other conditions like alarm history, et cetera, um, in order to have that and to keep that history, you need to have a ZControl gateway. And again, the reason for it is we have limited memory really with the chip that's in there. So there's only so much that we can track on the panel itself. But if you have this hooked to the ZControl cloud system, the control panel will check in. We call it a heartbeat. Basically, every 30 seconds to a minute, um, the control panel will check in with the cloud and it will give a status back and forth. So the cloud has effectively unlimited ability to store data. And so we store a lot of information there. So if you have your panel connected to the cloud, not only will you get notifications and have the ability to interact with that panel remotely, but you'll also be able to see things like the duration of the last cycle, how many times it's been reset, how many high water float counts have occurred, how long the panel's been in operation, what's the current temperature of the circuit board, and any alert history, which is really, really nice to see. Anytime that this panel has gone into an alarm, it will log all of that. So all of that's available, but you have to have the gateway and you have to put this thing online because all of that is stored in the cloud, not on the control panel itself. Now let's get into alarm conditions. I mentioned earlier in the presentation that the pivot monitors for a lot more than simply high water. So it does the traditional things, right? It does monitor for high water. If you have a high water float that comes up, obviously it's going to sound an alarm, an audible and visual alarm, and it will let you know that something is going wrong in that regard. If you have a seal fail or a seal starts leaking and letting water in, you'll get a seal fail alarm. If you have a three-phase pump and you're using the thermal circuits, and that pump overheats for any reason, obviously it's going to alarm for that. Those are all the traditional alarms that you would likely see in any historical panel. But in addition to that, we have a number of other alarms that these systems monitor for. So we'll start with a tripped overload. So if it is a three-phase panel or a panel that works with our reversing grinder pumps, it will have those rotary overloads. And if those overloads trip for any reason, the panel knows it. It's monitoring the overloads. So if it sees a tripped overload, it will sound an alarm and let you know that an overload has tripped and that it needs to be reset. If you have a motor contactor that isn't pulling in, if you have a coil that goes bad in a motor contactor, so the control panel, it knows that it's calling a motor contactor to run. But if it doesn't see the contactor pull in, then it knows there's a problem and it will sound an alarm. So again, just another thing that it can help to address before it becomes a huge problem. So another thing that I want to take a look at here, this is a blow up of that bracket. And I mentioned that there's a little mode button here, and that mode button cycles between hand off, and auto, right? Historically, in pumps, you might, or in panels, you might have an HOA switch, hand off auto. Hand means you're manually running that pump. If you put it into hand mode, the pump's going to turn on and just run until you turn it off. Service off is the off, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute. And then auto just means you're going to operate those pumps based off the floats. The mode button here, this green button, if you hit it, it's just a toggle switch and it's going to cycle. It'll go from auto to off to hand to off to auto. So if you keep hitting it, it's just going to cycle back and forth between those three options. So one of the things that we've done that's very different than any other control panel that we're aware of out there is we have what we call a service off mode. And historically, if you just have an HOA switch, just a little toggle switch, and you put that pump into off, it's just off, right? It's not, never going to call it to run. It's never going to do anything with it. It's just off. And so I will give an example of my own life. I have been to jobs before where I have done, I've made a service call and I've gone out to a job to do some maintenance on some stuff. I go into the panel, I turn the pumps off because I'm going to do some service work. And then, uh, like always happens, something comes up. It's more challenging than I thought, or I have to do, more at the project than I thought, or the day starts to get late. I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm cold, I'm wet, whatever it might be. I finish up, I do my service work, and I'm ready to leave. And I walk back over and I close the control panel, I lock it all up, and I leave. And what I haven't done is taken the pumps out of off. So that's a problem, right? If you have your pumps in off, they're not going to run. And you're not going to know that there's a problem historically with control panels. You're not going to know there's a problem until that water builds up, builds up, builds up, builds up, and eventually hits the high water alarm. And by that point, the tank's full, it's an emergency, and somebody's got to get out there right away. So that's one of those things we know happens in the real world. So we built these panels with what we call service off. So if you just toggle this between this hand service off and auto, and you put it into service off, it'll take the pump offline. It won't call it to run like normal off. But after 4 hours, in 4 hours is a default. That's a changeable value, but out of the box, it's 4 hours. After 4 hours, if you have not taken that pump and put it back into service. If you haven't put it back into auto after 4 hours, it will sound an alarm. And it says, hey, this service call is taking longer than it should. Make sure you know that this thing is still in off. So it basically is a, don't forget it's off kind of an alarm. Now, let's say that you go out there and you find that one of the pumps is down and you're going to need to replace it, and you don't have a replacement on the truck. You need to, order a replacement pump, and so it's going to be off, out of service for a few days. Obviously, you don't want to leave it in service off because it's going to sound an alarm after 4 hours, and you don't want that to happen. If you press and hold that mode button for 5 seconds, this pump one in this case, will go into what we call permanent off. And you can read it right below there. It says service off, but then it says below for permanent off, hold until LED blinks. So if you press and hold that mode button, I think it's about 5 seconds, you'll get a blinking light on this off. And what that means is it's permanent off. It's not going to sound an alarm. It's not going to call that pump to run. It's just like the old style handoff auto switch. If you put it into off, it's just going to ignore that pump. It's like it doesn't even exist. So we have the ability to do what you've always done, which is take that pump out of service for a long time. But if you're just going to go there and do a little bit of work and you're expecting that at the end of your service visit, you're going to be able to just put this right back into auto. If you don't do that in 4 hours, it'll sound an alarm and let you know, hey, you may have forgotten about this. And so the advantage of that, by the way, is it's giving you advance notice. Like now you know almost immediately, oh crap, I left the job. I didn't put that back into auto. I'm going to have to go back out there. But you also know it's not an emergency, right? You know that tank is at a low level. You can go back in the morning. You don't have to go back right now because you're at the risk of overflowing a tank. So it gives you advance notice that something's wrong, and that's what we're after. All right. So another new alarm that you're going to see is continuous run. So out of the box, continuous run is set for 20 minutes. And what that means is in auto mode, if a pump starts and it doesn't shut off within 20 minutes, it considers that problematic. Now, you can change that. It's 20 minutes as a default. And if you have a project and you know that, yeah, there are times when this thing's going to run for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, something like that, uninterrupted, you can change this to whatever you want, or you can disable it entirely if you'd like. But out of the box, we just know historically our the projects that Zoller is involved with, the vast majority of projects, a pump is going to kick on. It's maybe going to run for 5 or 10 minutes, and it's going to stop. Like it's going to complete a cycle. It's going to shut off, and then it'll queue up the next pump on the next cycle. So if a pump kicks on and it runs for 20 minutes, it will sound an alarm. Now it's important to note it doesn't turn the pump off. We don't want to turn the pump off, right? Like if it's running, we if the panel thinks it needs to run, we want it to run. We don't want to stop a cycle. It just says, hey, this is running a really long time. You should maybe check it out. So continuous run is again, it's one of these alarms that says, hey, something is behaving um, unexpectedly. And so again, if you have one of those jobs that you need to move that out and you need to change that to be 30 minutes or 40 minutes or an hour or whatever you might want, you can do that. But we know that 20 minutes works for the vast majority of projects that we're associated with. And lastly, what this panel will do that most other panels do not, it will monitor the float switches. This is probably one of the biggest scenarios that we run into. Float switch faults, float switches in general, I would say cause more problems in control panel applications than anything else. And we're not down. We like float switches. We're not. I'm not beating up on float switches. They just over time they either have a tendency to uh, get debris building up on them, or maybe during installation the tether links aren't set appropriately and they get stuck, or over time they fail and they fail to switch appropriately and give an appropriate signal. It's just something that happens, or they get installed out of order. Okay. So there are a number of things that can happen with float switches that cause problems with control panels. And we know this, we've just seen it for decades. So we have active monitoring of those float switches in the pivot systems. So if a float, you're going to hook those floats, and it knows that stop should be the lowest float, and that above stop there's a start float or a lead float, and then above that is a lag, and above that is an alarm. Um, and so uh, if those floats rise out of order, then it will sound an alarm because it says, okay, maybe a float has gotten stuck. Or like let's say that your stop float at the very bottom doesn't come up, but the start float above it does. That's not a condition that should happen. If the middle float comes up, the bottom float should be up too. So if it sees an issue like that, it sounds an alarm. But beyond just sounding an alarm, it takes what we call like evasive maneuvers, right? An evasive action. It tries to make sure that pump is going to run and keep that pit pumped down. So like I said at the very, very beginning, we want to prioritize running the pumps. The last thing we want is some kind of an overflow or some kind of a flooding situation. So, for instance, let's see. I want to make sure. Yeah. Okay. So if a float, uh, if the low float in a tank does not come up, that's the stop float. If it does not come up, but the next float up does rise, then the control panel, uh, its firmware makes the assessment that it can no longer trust that low float. It assumes that it's either broken or it's stuck, and so it's going to turn the pump on, even though that low float is down. It's going to start the pump, and it's going to run that pump until that middle float, that start float, drops out. but it won't shut that pump off immediately because it knows there's supposed to be some extra distance between that and the low float. So it doesn't just stop it when that middle float drops out. It will run that pump for another roughly 10 seconds. And it's just trying to lower that water a little bit more. It also keeps that pump from short cycling. And again, the goal is keep the pump in that basin at an appropriate level. And so, there's an alarm going off too because it says, "Hey, something's not right here." So it's calling attention to it, but at the same time, it's working to keep your system at an operational level. If if the high water float comes up and the two lower floats don't come up, it makes the same kind of assessment that something must be stuck or there's something that's impeding those floats operations. It will it'll start the pump or pumps plural. If it's a duplex system, it'll start both pumps and it will run until that high water float drops out, but it'll actually run it even a little bit longer. It'll run it for like 15 or maybe even 20 seconds, again, to just get that water level down a little bit further in the basin before it shuts the pump off. So if it doesn't think it can count on a low float to stop it, it switches over to a timer-based operation to keep that pit dry. So there's a switch on the exterior right-hand side of these control panels, and that is your test and silence switch. And so before we go any further, it's important to note that, as I've been alluding, there are a lot of different alarms that can happen. And so if you go to a site and there is an alarm happening, the door is closed as it should be, the panel door is closed, it's fine to go up and silence the alarm. So if you find that switch on the side, tap it down, um, the horn will stop screaming. And that's what everybody wants, right? You're there, you don't need it screaming in your ear. So silence it. But what you don't want to do is hold that switch down for a period of time because the holding that switch down is the reset. So if there are alarms that are going off, you want to look inside the panel and you want to try to discern what alarms are happening before you reset it. Because if you reset the alarms, unless those alarms are active and come right back, you're going to lose what that data. So, if there are alarms going off, it will tell you if you open up that panel, if it's a Pivot Pro, it's going to read it right out on the screen. It's going to tell you what alarms are happening. And it's good to know because if you're trying to fix something, right? Is it alarming because the floats came up out of order? Is it alarming because you actually had a high water alarm? Is it alarming because you have a seal fail going off? It's important to identify what is the alarm that it's telling you before you reset it. So it's fine to silence it. Just tap that switch and silence it, but don't hold that switch down or you'll erase the history of what's going on there. Now, if you have this connected to ZControl, if it's connected to the cloud, whatever alarms have happened will already be stored in the cloud. Even if you reset the panel, it'll be stored in the cloud. But still, it's just a good idea. If you go to a panel and it's alarming, um, don't reset the panel before first studying the alarm. So, I mentioned that there are a number of settings in these panels, and almost all of them are adjustable in some way. And we're just going to touch on some of these. I don't want to, we're not going to go into them in great detail, but just know if you have a panel and there's a behavior about that panel that for whatever reason you want to change. Let's say you've got one of these situations where occasionally a pump runs longer than 20 minutes and it's fine. You know that's going to happen and you want to change it. You know, check the manual, check the quick start guide, or call us. We'll help you out with how to modify that panel. But here are just some of the things that you can do. If you have a duplex panel, a two pump panel, you can set that to simplex mode if for some reason you don't want to use two pumps. You can quickly and easily do that. When we say duplex, or if we have it in duplex mode, what that means to us, it's true duplex, meaning if the water level rises high enough, it will call both of those pumps to run simultaneously. So it'll run both pump one and two at the same time. We also have a third mode called alternating mode. And alternating mode is still for a two pump panel, but it will never run both of those pumps at the same time. And this could be beneficial if you have a power supply that can't handle running the amperage of both pumps simultaneously. Maybe these pumps are pumping into a wastewater treatment plant and there are limitations on how much flow can come in there, and they don't ever want two pumps to run simultaneously. You can put that into alternating mode. You can There are some different ways you can modify the lead and lag operation in a two pump system. You can set it to 3 or 4 float operation. I'm going to stop here for a second too and comment on this. We say this in all of our literature. I mean, it's in the first page of our manual. It's in the quick start guide, quick reference guides. But we recommend for most applications, and this doesn't matter if you have a simplex or duplex panel, we recommend only using 3 floats. There's one example, or sorry, one exception to that, which I'll touch on. But in most sewage applications or a like an effluent application or a sewage application, or even a standard sump application, uh, it's unlikely that you really need 4 floats. And if you have 4 floats, what we're talking about is a stop, a lead, a lag, and an alarm. So 4 floats separate. A 4 float operation means your lag float and your alarm, high water alarm, are separate. And if you have a 3 float operation, what we're saying is that the highest float in the tank actually ties together the lag and the alarm operation. We recommend that for the majority of applications because typically one pump is will be sized sufficient to handle the load. So if it's a sewage application, whatever the incoming flow rate is into that basin, one pump should have sufficient flow rate to be able to keep up. And that means if a second pump has to kick on, there's probably something wrong with the first pump. And you want to know that. You don't want it to just come on, pump the basin down, and mask any problem. Like maybe the first pump has failed and that second pump has to kick on in order to cover for it. Well, you want to know that. And so if you have a 3 float operation where lag and alarm operations are tied together, you're going to know it. If the lag float comes on, it's also going to sound the alarm at the same time, and that's what you want. The one exception to that is if you have a stormwater application. Stormwater applications are notoriously variable, and it's hard to put in a pump large enough to handle every stormwater situation. I mean, sometimes it just rains and rains and rains, and it pours buckets, and you just get these crazy storms. And so, a lot of stormwater applications, the operators know that during certain bad storms, they expect that both pumps are going to have to come on simultaneously in order to keep that pump from overflowing. And it doesn't mean that it's an alarm condition. So that's the one exception where really a 4 float operation makes sense. But almost all other operations, 3 floats are really all you need. All right, but that's customizable in there too. Um, the order of the floats, whether lag is actually on top or high water is on top, is something you can adjust. Whether the horn uh, stops screaming when the alarm goes away or whether it continues to scream. So let's say you have um, let's say that you have, I'm trying to think of a good example of this. Let's say that a pump overheats and you have a thermal alarm. Well, you obviously want that alarm to scream, but eventually that pump's going to cool down and it will it'll come back into service. When that happens, if you have it as the horn is active, it will stop screaming when that pump comes back into service. Now, the panel will still be in alarm mode, but the horn itself will stop screaming. The beacon will still be lit to indicate that there was a problem. Same thing with high water alarm. Like a high water alarm, it will sound that alarm audibly, but if the high water condition recedes, the beacon will still stay lit, but it will stop screaming that high water alarm. So just some things that you can change. So there are a few other things in here too. I'm not going to go into them any more detail than that. Um, so
Just
lastly,
a quick heads up here. I know I recognize that we're just about finished
oh,
up here, but for those of you that do need to dip out, we appreciate you sticking around. We're going to finish up with 5 minutes here of finishing off this Pivot Pro stuff. But appreciate those that have stuck out and need to go. But if you're able to stick around, got 5-10 minutes for us, we appreciate that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. And I'm sorry that this is running a little bit long. We're going to wrap this up here very
Hey, that's what
shortly.
happens when you got great examples and lots of great information, right? Like I'm sitting here living on the different examples you give for like the high water and the lead leg. So super appreciative.
All right. So I mentioned that we want to prioritize running the pumps. We want to make sure that we keep those pumps working even when bad things happen. And so again, if you have floats that come up that get stuck or otherwise go bad, that panel will pivot to a timer operation from just relying solely on the floats. Um, if a pump gets stuck in the on position, or if a float gets stuck up and it doesn't a float doesn't drop out, and so it just wants to continue to run, it'll tell you, hey, this system is running longer than it should. Yeah, I've talked about most of these already, I think, but these are things that the panel will do to help solve problems and keep these systems operational when things happen. And the reality is in the real world, things come up. Floats fail. People install them wrong. Like the contactors fail. Like things go wrong. We've tried to think through what can go wrong and how do we alert you or fix it, right? Like how do we keep these pumps operating? How does this panel keep these pumps operating? So we've tried to think a lot about that. All right. A couple of slides just here real quick about ZControl. So I mentioned that the ZControl cloud interface, if you have a gateway which you can pair with the Pivot Pro, um, you can see that this is an example of what the website looks like. It's got these tiles. So here we have a gateway and a Pivot Pro. If you were to click this view button, it's going to come up here and you can say, so Zoeller Pivot Pro panel. And it basically gives you a check, right? Like here's what's going on right now. It will tell you if there's a pump running or not. You can go down here to the current status. You can say what's been the alert history. You can go down to device settings and change those settings. So the cloud gives you a lot of capability. There is also a mobile app, which is great too. You don't have to have a laptop and log on to the website like everything else. There's an app that will put all of this right at your fingertips. Again, some of the cool things you can do if you are a service provider and you've got a system, if it alarms, it will send you a notification through text or push notification through the app or email, and you'll know something's going wrong. You can hop on that app, you can look, see what the alarm is, you can silence it, and figure out what you need to do. So there are a lot of configuration adjustments that you can make, changing different settings remotely. One of the things you cannot do remotely is turn the pump on. And that's a safety issue. We don't ever want a pump to turn on. We don't want somebody manually turning a pump on unless somebody's got eyes on that pump, right? So maybe there's a service provider that's there that's got that pump apart. You don't want to be able to patch in accidentally remotely and say, "Oh, this pump's offline. Let me turn it back on again." And then somebody's actually got their hand on that impeller. So, just things like that. So there's some safety issues. You can't do everything remotely, but you can do a lot. So there's a number of bits of literature out there that you can download from our website that tell you all the different features and capabilities of these panels. Um, I've talked about a lot of these, so I'm not going to go through it, but we've got them for the standard pivot and for the Pivot Pro. Um, just another collection of different literature that's on our website. And then lastly here, I want to touch on this because it can cause some confusion. We came out back in 2021 with the Pivot series, which is the standard pivot and the Pivot Pro. And both of those are smart panels. They both use microprocessors, they both run firmware, they both do all of the things that we've been talking about throughout this presentation. But just last year, we released a new product called the Pivot RL. And the powers that be in marketing really wanted to leverage the Pivot name because it's gotten to be known and people trust it in the marketplace. So we have a panel that is a very simple relay logic, bare operational panel. The Pivot RL stands for relay logic. It is not a smart panel. It does not run any firmware. It does not have a microprocessor. The relay logic basically just means that it's using traditional little relays on this board here just to move electricity around to operate a motor contactor, operate a beacon, sound an alarm, audible alarm. And this is a very, very basic panel for basic um, residential applications where like cost is the absolute key factor. So it's only available in simplex. It's only single phase. But I just wanted to make sure you understand if you see a Pivot RL, it's not one of the smart panels. The Pivot and the Pivot Pro are the smart panels in our offering. And this is just another shot of that resource page QR code. But this is the end of my presentation. Um, I appreciate everybody's attention. I appreciate you letting me run over a couple of minutes here. I apologize for that. Um, but yeah, we hope you have learned something. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take that. And uh, thank you very much for your time.
Perfect. So I just launched a quick poll, just see kind of where some people are at. I'll run that poll as I show how they can find the products on the ATS SpecTool. Just a reminder, if this is your first time seeing ATS or if you haven't seen it in a while, ATS is a free platform for engineers and design build contractors to engage with. Architects, interior designers as well for things that are more on the finish side. But with our topic today, focusing on mechanical rooms, focusing on our sump pumps, that's really ATS's core specialty. If you're looking to sign up, you can use the button here. Again, free accounts for those, and our team will make sure that we embed you with the rest of your firm because you're able to share projects within your firm. We just launched the poll about Zoeller Masters. If you've not used the ATS Masters, it's a great way to keep your internal standards up to date. And my team, Mo, Andre, Mel, Vishnu, and myself, all happy to meet with you one on one, understand what's in your current master, help you build a copy on the spec tool. This will help send push notifications if there's any discontinuances. And I'll show you the most important feature, which is our drag and drop. So you can quickly and easily select products for your quick specs projects and other masters. So really quickly here, once you're logged in, you're living in this quick action area, you're going to create, you're coming to the site for one of generally two things. If you're a team lead, then you might be looking to build a master as well. But generally, you're looking for a quick selection or a project. The difference between the two, project is going to be application based. We're going to be able to recommend products because the application tells us that. It's also going to be location based. So different states, different provinces have different building codes, and those are embedded in the system so that we meet the barrier-free code for your specific area. If you are just looking for a quick selection, though, if you're just coming here looking for a pump and panel, then you would just pop in a quick title like that, hit finish, and you're into making your product selections. You can see my account. I've pinned all my various favorite products. I've got a ton. I'm in here all the time. You could see the pump category here. And I'll jump back by hitting the category tab here. And again, show you all the different products that are here. We have a search button as well, so you can search for pumps, see all the different categories that are associated with pumps. So we could, make our pump selection, get our panel, get any float switches or additional accessories like your, the rail systems, things like that. But let's jump back into that pump category. Here you'll see, a wide variety of products, and it's like, oh, how do I decide? The same way using any other pump manufacturer site. We've got the pump sizing tool embedded into the system here. This is going to link you directly to the Zoeller pump sizing. It'll give you a model number, and then you can pop it right in here and find exactly the one you're looking for. If you're already familiar with the pump, you already know what you're looking for, you could maybe refine down your voltage to say, okay, I need a 575 or I need a 208 three-phase. Maybe we're doing a effluent or a grinder pump, dewatering pump, anything like that. So if we want to for dewatering, then we've got all these different options. You can filter by horsepower, seal, everything like that as well. With all the different pump products, you'll see we also have the additional information that you might need to help make a decision. Spec sheet, pump curve listed here. So pump curve is going to bring up exactly the pump curve, so you can see, okay, I've got 50 feet ahead, I've got 20 GPM. Yeah, this is a great selection. This meets my requirements. If you want more information, the spec sheet has all the detailed information embedded right into it. So that same information you can get from the Zoeller site, all embedded here, nice and easy to select. And importantly, once we've made our selection, we're then going to come into our control panel as well. So I'm going to take this off and go back to, we'll do the 295, select most popular. So simplex, 3-inch flange, do 20-inch cord or 20-foot cord. We make your selection just like every other piece on the ATS system. We recommend the appropriate components that tie with it. So in this case, our Pivot Pro series panel here, if you want more information on that, the spec sheet's listed there as well. If you want to include any options like the additional alarm panel, we can do so. Hit add product, and now we've made an appropriate selection with a panel that matches the volts and amps of the pump. That's embedded in our rule engine. Make sure it's the right pump, the right panel. From there, you can hit the download button if this is all you need. I mentioned the masters earlier. Other than keeping your internal standards up to date, our masters tab also makes it easy for your team to all work off of an approved selection. So you can see our demo account here. We've got a ton of different products, right? If you were doing, a lead master, you could look in your commercial master and find all the lead products. In this case, I'm going to go up to this other tab called ATS templates. So masters is going to be your individual firm's masters. If you are doing chains, restaurants, if you are doing multifamily, if you are doing schools and you have school boards, we can set all those up as individual masters on your account with the approved products in there. 3 names and numbers, everything easy to update. If you're working from the templates is basically our versions of masters. And we can go to our Class A office. We got all these different tabs in here. We'll jump into the mechanical room. And, we've got a sump pump in here, N161, simple pump with an oil guard assembly. We can just drag and drop that into our project file. So the masters is great because it gives you easy access to drag and drop, and it helps keep everything up to date. And then once you're done, hit the download spec, download it in as many formats as you want. We've got submittals, schedules in Excel, 3 different types of written specs, the manufacturer spec sheet, Revit files if you need it, even fancy brochures if you need to present this pump up to your owner group and get some buy-in. Usually I find the owner group is less concerned with, say, the aesthetics of the pump, but very concerned in some of those additional features that the Pivot Pro offered. But we can, that's going to give you these types of formats here. Shows again exactly the selection you've made, customized spec to match your selection. The manufacturer spec sheet that we mentioned, where the manufacturer's, internal spec sheets are embedded, gives you all the additional information you might need. Written specs and fixture schedule, a pump schedule here. If you're doing backflow, you get a backflow schedule. If you're getting a water heater, all the different tabs are going to be associated with the product that's selected. And then our written spec, these are 2 most common. The CSI 3-part spec, where you've got your fixture tag and title, detailed written spec, and then your list of approved manufacturers down here below. So your basis of design in this case, your J295 or the 4295 for duplex or simplex, and then the panel spec below. And that's a little bit different than our internal ATS spec, which is, it really is just orientation. It's, some of the margins are different, but the verbiage remains the same. We go Zoeller pump, 295, pump and panel all together. So that's kind of the quick intro to the SpecTool. If you want a deeper dive, feel free to reach out to me. We also have a presentation coming up, I think next week, where we're doing a what's new with SpecTool, focusing on all the different features that have come up over the last little bit. But if you need help getting your master set up, If you would like help adding Zoeller to your master, if you want a presentation for your firm specifically on this topic, feel free to reach out to us. My team will have your CPD hours out by the end of the week. Thank you all for spending time with us today. Welcome to another ATS University in this year, 2026, and we're excited to have you back. We'll check in with you again soon. Bye for now, all.